Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Thursday, May 14th, and today in math we are working on Module 17, Lesson 3, and 17, Lesson 4. And we're talking about measurement today, and we're talking about non-standard units of measurement. And what that means is we're not measuring using a ruler and inches and centimeters and feet. We're using objects in order to measure. So our I can statement is I can measure the length of objects using units that are the same length. So today is kind of a rainy, yucky day. And so today is kind of the perfect day to have this lesson. You can kind of go through your house and measure different things. In the picture here, they show you several things you could try. You have these green cubes at home with you. Mrs. Peterson and I sent them with you, so you could use those. You could even use the stick of 10 of them, and you could line some of those up and count by 10. So that's one great thing to measure, and that's what I would actually suggest using on the next few pages. But we also included a strip that has paper clips on it if you don't have paper clips at your house, and you can choose to use that. So the Spark Your Learning part is just to pick an object, any object you'd like, draw that object in this box, and then label how many clips or how many green cubes long it is. So for example, I might draw my stapler and I might write below it 14 green cubes long. Okay, so you have some choices on that page. On this next page, I suggested in the directions on today's packet that you would use the green cubes because you don't have these squares that we have at school. But you could also use the paper clips if you've lost your green cubes or can't find them today. You could use that strip of paper clips. So Theo measures a marker. Find and measure the length of a marker. So use a marker at your house. If you don't have a marker, use a pen. Draw your marker or pen here. Be sure it's touching the end of the line, and then lay those cubes right next to it. Remember, they need to be touching, and see how many cubes long it is. So that marker is about blank cubes. And you could even cross this square out and write the word cubes or draw your little green cubes. Down here, you're choosing a different unit to measure the marker. So this is where I would suggest that you use the paper clips. So probably the green cubes up here, the paper clips down here. If you don't still have the green cubes, you could use Cheerios, or you could use tiny Legos to line up, but try to use two different things to measure that same object. And here's the point of that. Why are the measurements different? How are the units different? And so the reason we're talking about this is obviously if you use the little green cubes, you're going to need more of those to line up to be the same as the marker than you would the paper clips, which are bigger. So you need to think about that. On this page, again, I'm hoping you still have your green cubes. Nima measures the length of a crayon. How long will the crayon be using our green ones cubes? Match the end of the cubes at the end of the crayon. So you're going to place your crayon right here and trace around it, draw that crayon, and then you're going to lay your cubes next to it. So match the end of the cubes with the end of the crayon, place the cubes end to end without any gaps in between to measure the length of the crayon. Draw how to measure the crayon. About how long is the crayon? How many green cubes long was that? If you have lost those green cubes, go ahead and use the paper clips. Will the measurement be correct if there are gaps between the units? And that's something I want you to think about before moving on. Use cubes to measure the length of the ribbon. So again, you're going to have to use those green cubes because you don't have the square tiles that we have at school. On your own. Franco measures the length of a pencil below using paper clips. Franco says the pencil is 6 paper clips long. Did Franco measure the pencil correctly using paper clips? Okay, I want you to look really carefully at his paper clips. This is kind of a tricky question. Did Franco do this correctly? If you look carefully, you can see that he overlapped his paper clips a little bit. And that's going to be just enough to throw off his measurements just a little bit. So you need to explain that his paper clips should be touching but not overlapping there. So he did not measure correctly. And number 3, measure the length of the rectangle below 2 different ways. So this time I would use, since you have the green cubes, use paper clips and green cubes since you don't have these colored squares at home with you. So just cross out that square and make it a paper clip. And in lesson 4, you're going to make a non-standard measuring tool. I can make a measuring tool with units that are the same size and measure objects using that tool. How do you show units of a rectangle? Actually, we're going to skip that page in the directions I said to skip this page. And we're going to move on to the next page. Susie wants to measure the length of a pencil. She uses grid paper to make a measuring tool. Okay, so grid paper I have stapled on, and I'm not going to show it to you because you have it. It's stapled onto the back of your package. It is the white squares. It's kind of like graph paper, and it says 15.5 and 17.4 at the top. That's what you're going to use today to make your measuring tool. So Susie wants to measure the length of a pencil. She uses grid paper to make a measuring tool. Make a measuring tool by cutting out a strip of squares of grid paper. So you're just going to cut one row off of your grid paper at the top. Number your squares. Draw to show how Susie can measure a pencil. So you're going to draw a pencil and you're going to draw your grid paper next to it. About how long is the pencil in your grid paper? Okay, so you're going to use that graph paper today to make a measuring tool. Arthur measures a crayon and a colored pencil. Measure a crayon using your measuring tool that you just made from the graph paper. The crayon is about how many units long? And then measure a colored pencil. How many units long is that? Write the number of units. So let's say my crayon is 9 units long. I'm just giving a number. I didn't really measure one, I'm guessing. And my colored pencil is 12 units long. So I would write 9 and 12, and then I would choose, do I need it? Let's do that. If it's 9 and 12, and again, I'm not measuring mine, so you need to measure yours to make sure using that graph paper. Then I would put the symbol in between here, and it would be 9 is less than 12. So which object is longer? It would be the colored pencil, unless you have really a short colored pencil and a very long crayon. Why is it important to line up the measuring tool with the end of the object? If you move it off so that it's not at the end of the object, your measurement will not be correct. Mia writes with a pen. Use the measuring tool you made to measure the length of the pen. So you're just going to lay your graph paper measuring tool. So all of us have exactly the same graph paper, so we should get exactly the same numbers. You're going to lay it so the end of your measuring tool is at that line and measure that pen. And when I lay my measuring tool down next to my pen, it's almost exactly the length of my measuring tool. I believe it's 15 units long. See if that's what you get. Using your measuring tool to measure that ribbon. How many units long is that? Use the measuring tool you made to measure 2 objects of different lengths. So here you get to pick your 2 objects. Write the 2 numbers here. Which object is longer? Since you picked the object, you'll need to tell me what it was. Use the measuring tool you made, draw a line, and all of our lines, again, are going to be exactly the same because we're all using the exact same graph paper. So you're going to draw a line that is exactly 5 squares long using that graph paper. All right, have fun today measuring things around your house. If you would like to do the review unit, you certainly may. Have a great day.